set, take.
1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime.
2, every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed.
3,
There are more than 3.5 million breast cancer survivors in the U.S. alone.
making breast cancer the largest group of all cancer survivors.
4,
40,000 U.S. women will die this year due to breast cancer.
But I survived.
I survived,
I survived.
I survived.
and so will you.
Early detection is key.
Get screened today.
Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne, the talk show. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with the beautiful Miss Cassandra Welchlin, Executive Director of the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. I'm so excited to have her on today. Welcome, Cassandra.
Thank you for having me, Joanne.
Awesome. You just look so beautiful. I'm loving
thank
that
you.
suit.
I'm loving your suit.
Thank you. Well, Woman to Woman with Joanne is, we just love sharing the stories of Mississippi women to inspire and encourage women all over the world. So my first question is always, tell me, where were you born and raised here in Mississippi?
I was born right here in Jackson, Mississippi.
Awesome.
And I was raised by a single mom, Mary Overton, who has taught so many children around this here city of ours, and a grandma.
Awesome.
And so, but I grew up right around the Ferris Street district. That's where I was.
Awesome.
And a lot of history there.
Yes.
But that's where I was raised, right there.
Awesome. On Ferris Street.
Right on Ferris Street. I
That's
remember all the Ferris Street festivals as a young kid, being a part of the excitement that was there. And it would always happen around the fair as well. So there was just a lot of excitement that brought joy to me as a kid.
Awesome. In the Alamo Theater.
Alamo
Did you ever go to any events at the Alamo?
I never did, but my mom told me a lot about the stories of her going there and movies they used to attend there. So
That's awesome. Very historic there.
I remember though eating going to the Big Apple Inn though.
Yes. Is that where the pig ears?
Yeah, the pig ears, the
sandwiches
oxtails, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Cassandra, tell me about your experience growing up here in Mississippi.
Yeah, so, what's interesting about my story, because my story really leads to my work. I grew up in a household, I tell people all the time that my mom taught me justice, but my grandmother taught me what service was.
Awesome.
My grandmother, who I call Granny, she's gone on to be with the Lord now, but she raised, she was the foster care mother for my mom and her 5 siblings. And I'm the eldest grandkid. And so she was the caretaker of the community. And she would bake little pots of cornbread and share that with a meal with the folks in the community who didn't have a family. And because I was the elder, it was my job to go and take them that little pot of love of cornbread, with all the goodness that she would make in that plate. And but she would tell me, Cassandra, I don't want you to just drop the plates off. I want you to stay there with them and talk to them. So where little girls will learn how to braid hair on a Barbie doll, I learned how to braid hair on Miss Taylor's hair because, she didn't have anyone there. And I learned how to put that little gray dye, I don't even know what it's called, but in the hair. But she was Native American and African American, and she had this beautiful long hair. And so I learned what service was through that experience. And my mother, she was a low-wage worker, making $2 and I believe 13 cents as a maid in the Woolfolk building downtown.
Wow.
And she would take me to work with her. And I remember her hiding me in the maid closet day after day while she'd go out on the floor and change the garbage and clean the toilet. And I would be in that little maid closet with her colleague playing patty cake or jacks. I learned how to play jacks real early on. And what I didn't realize, though, was that was my childcare story. My mother didn't have enough money to send me to childcare. And so I thought that was normal, but she had to sneak me into work to help because she wanted me in a safe place, right? She couldn't leave me at home. And my granny was also a hairstylist on Farish Street too.
Right.
And so she couldn't really leave me. And so I learned, and what's interesting about that story is that she was working right across the street from the state capitol, where the lawmakers were, who had an opportunity to really increase her wages. So she could make enough money so that I could go to childcare.
Right.
And so that experience has stuck with me. Those experiences have stuck with me and have really propelled me and called me to do advocacy work on behalf of women and girls in the state of Mississippi.
Right.
And so that's the work that I do. And I get to do that in community, but I also get to do that at the state capitol.
Wow.
You know, working and advocating in front of those lawmakers to say, make women's lives better by making them a priority in the legislative process and also in the budget, process, so they can have access to childcare, have access to higher wages, because women just want to have a dignified life, to take care of their families. And so, that experience has led me into some just meeting amazing people, just not in the state of Mississippi, but across the country, who share the same passion, the same love that I have for justice. And those things, I really have a conviction around justice and a conviction around truth telling and a conviction just to do right by people, because everyone have the right to live a dignified life and have a life of freedom without, oppression and racism. And so, so all those experiences are, have made me who I am, today, to be the activist and the advocate, to advocate for truth and justice for, particularly communities of color and particularly Black women and girls.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So tell me about the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable.
It is an incredible organization.
Awesome.
The Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable is actually an affiliate of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, Black Women's Roundtable. So we are part of a national organization, and there are, I believe, 11 affiliates across the country, and most of them are in the South. And it was, it's led at the national level by Melanie Campbell. And what's so awesome about this organization is that it is, all of us are led by Black women.
Awesome.
And it was co-founded by Dr. Dorothy Height, who was an incredible leader who just believed in justice for all, and particularly advocating for Black people. And so the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, we are an intergenerational network of Black women and girls. We work to increase the voter participation, civic engagement work for Black women and girls. And we advocate and push and champion public policies that impact our lives. So some of the work that the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, we have a couple of programs that we are working on. One is the Mississippi Women's Economic Security Initiative. We were the first in the South to launch a progressive policy initiative that centered women. Not just Black women, but that centered all women in the state of Mississippi. Because if we don't assert ourselves in the policy process, then the legislators won't do that, because the legislators are mostly made up of men. And usually made up of white men. And so it is very important that we bring our chairs to the table, like Shirley Chisholm said. And so so we've been pushing public policies in the state of Mississippi that impact women in the state, and particularly Black women. And so we've been pushing equal pay for equal work. Mississippi has the widest wage gap in the country.
Wow.
In the country, where Black women are making 56 cents on the dollar. Right.
Wow.
Right. And so that's, we're losing, over the course of our 40-year career, over $800,000. So you're talking about money in retirement that's being lost, money that could go towards our health care, money that can go to, leaving a monetary legacy for our children. All that money is wasted or not even there, because we don't have an equal pay law here in the state of Mississippi. And so we have been pushing, for that, for a law like that. And also we've been pushing for paid leave and sick leave. And we know COVID-19 has really elevated these important, these are just basic things that anyone should have.
Right.
And we know, and childcare, we've been pushing for childcare also in the state of Mississippi. So these are just some of the policies that the Black Women's Roundtable has been elevating. And it is so important because it has galvanized and it has been a way to bring other women to the table so they can talk about their stories and say, hey, this is about, this is about me. And we also are doing a lot of civic engagement work around the census. We know the census ended way too early.
Yes.
It wasn't supposed to end until October, but we launched our Black Youth Vote program that, focused on young people getting engaged.
Right.
And so we have been canvassing, doing no contact canvassing in the state, telling people to complete the census. But now we have definitely shifted to voting because that is so key and so important. So we have a lot going on at the Black Women's Roundtable, and we want people to engage with us because for us, it's about building this long-term infrastructure, leadership infrastructure in the state of Black women and girls so that we can shift and leverage our power because Black women, and I know we're going to get to the voting, we have the largest voter turnout anywhere else in the country is right here in Mississippi among Black women.
That's awesome.
And so we want to leverage that power, but not just for presidential elections, every election.
Amen.
Yeah.
And so, y'all, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with more Woman to Woman with Joanne.
My name is Amika Coleman, and I am the founder and CEO of Strands of Faith. Strands of Faith is a faith-based hair and beauty lifestyle brand, and we focus on providing moisturizing products for dry hair textures. Our products are geared towards naturals who have dry textures and they need to replenish the moisture in their hair, so they offer a great moisture balance. And also for those naturals who want to grow their hair to long lengths, our products are great because they offer length retention. We currently have 9 products. 6 products are featured in our Holy Grail collection. That's our main collection that focuses on moisture. And then we have 3 additional products that were added later: a shampoo bar, a sealing oil, and a moisturizing styling custard. Our products are handmade in small batches, and we use quality ingredients. And our goal is to create our products to be as clean as possible, so we don't use harsh ingredients. And also, I test each product on my hair first before they're ever placed in the hands of the consumer. We pray over each of our products, and they're made with a ton of love and a lot of faith.
All right, we are back with beautiful Miss Cassandra Welchlin, and now let's get into this thing called voting that is so important. And I see you have a really a true passion for voting. So talk to me about voting and how important it is in Mississippi, not only the presidential election, but the local elections here in Mississippi.
Well, I want to share the National Black Women's Roundtable did a national poll with in partnership with Essence magazine, and this is the 6th year that we've done it. And what the poll does, it surveys what concerns Black women in the United States. And the poll showed a couple of different things, and it gets to this conversation we're having around voting. It basically talked about that Black women are overwhelmingly concerned about survival, safety, and the stability when it comes to issues impacting our communities. It said the top 3 things that Black women had concern about in the United States were racism, related to hate crimes, corruption in government, voting, and voter suppression tactics. Those were the top 3 things that Black women said that they were really concerned about. And one of the things that Black women identified was reducing structural and systemic racism and policing around the criminal justice system. And we know that we've been living in these 2 pandemics around race, the racial injustice of, killing Black bodies,
Yes.
from Breonna Taylor to George
Yes.
Floyd. But even way before then, we know this has been happening.
Definitely.
And the pandemic.
Yes.
And so more than ever, voting is so important.
Yes.
And we know this as Black people and as Black women, because we have always been a part of and in the middle of every political, social, economic, environmental fight in this country.
Yes.
And we have always stood up for what's right. And we have done that through our organizing and through our voting.
Yes.
Like that is just who we are and who we've made to be. And so it even more critically now, it is important because when people go to the ballot box, we're going to be voting. I know we got names on the ballot, right? And this isn't just about the presidential elections. We also have some local elections too, and some state elections. To me, that's where it really is important because it is the local leaders and the state leaders that make decisions about our communities.
And our everyday lives.
And our everyday lives.
Yes.
And so when we go and vote, and I tell people this all the time, that policies impact our kitchen tables, but the policy makers are the ones who actually have to vote. And so they're the ones that's impacting our kitchen tables.
Yes.
And so when people go to the polls to vote this election, healthcare is on the ballot.
Yes.
What else is on the ballot? We've heard about the riots or the people that's being, well, not the riots, but the people that's being treated unjustly in these prisons.
Yes.
Our loved ones who are in
Yes.
those prisons and how they're being cared for,
Definitely.
that's on the ballot. So when people go to the polls, they need to think about, what's happening in my household. That thing is on the ballot. We know
Right.
our children are having Zoom school, and we know there is inequities that exist there because not
Yes.
everyone have the same amount of access.
Right.
Internet is not, accessible to everyone.
It is not.
Everyone doesn't have technology. And then we also know that not every school is equal,
Right.
or funded equitably. And so these are the things that's on the ballot. And so when people go to the polls, this election is so important.
Yes.
It's so important because of those things. People who benefit from the social safety nets. You heard me talk about childcare. Right now, we had about 800, I believe, and 65,000 women who left the workforce just over the course of this year. And it had to do with COVID-19.
Yes.
They lost their jobs, they lost hours, which means that they lost money.
Yes.
They lost all those things. So that is what's so important and so critical this election cycle. And it's the local elections. We know that we got the presidential elections.
Yes.
But it is these state elections that's going to be important. We have the Senate race, with Mike Espy and Cindy Hyde
Yes.
Smith, right?
Yes.
Now, we are a nonpartisan organization, but we also know that it is important that we elect leaders that will vote our values.
Yes.
And that is so critical and important. And so people, when they go to the polls, you got to look at these two people. Like,
Yes.
what have they said and what have
Yes.
they done, for our communities? And so people have to go and vote for those things. And so we're encouraging and we want to make our ancestors proud. And we also know that this is also about our future, our children.
Yes.
And so this election is so key, and our children are watching us. And, we've been in communities and we've been hearing from people who are excited about voting, but we've also heard people who say, what have they done for me? They haven't done anything for me.
Right.
And what we say is, your vote is your voice.
Yes.
And so we have seen elections where people have lost just by a small margin because people had that kind of attitude.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So voting is that's why voting is important. And we know that Black women have been the backbone of our elections, and we need Black women and Black community to really show up and to vote.
yes.
And that's so key and so important.
Yes.
And so we're just urging everyone to go out and vote, and to go and vote early.
Early. So tell them how they can vote early here in Mississippi.
Yeah. So we don't have what other states have, which is called early voting.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But what we do have absentee voting.
Yes.
And right now is absentee voting up until October 31st.
Yes.
We need everyone out there. If you qualify, if you are over the age of 65, if you have a illness, if you've been impacted by COVID-19,
Yes.
if you are caregiving for someone and you're not able to get to the polls, you have an opportunity to go down to your circuit clerk's office and vote. And we're just encouraging everyone. And we're seeing record numbers of people requesting absentee ballots and just going to the polls to vote. And so we're just encouraging everyone, go now. Don't and get your day ready. Like get your election day plan ready. Are you vote ready? That's kind of one of our hashtags. Are you vote ready?
Yes.
Have you decided what time you're going to go on election day if you can't go to your get an absentee ballot? What time you're going to go vote, right? That's going to be really important. What are you taking with you? You know, we definitely want you protected when you go. But if people can go and do that absentee voting right now, we need you to do that right now. In every circuit clerk's office, that's where you go and do that. Find out where your polling locations is. If you cannot do absentee ballot, go ahead and get your plan together right now. Just like you was about to go to a wedding or you're about to get married. Get all your plan. Just go ahead and plan.
So tell me, for people who don't have a ride, tell me about how they can get a ride to go and vote.
Particularly in the metro area, this amazing organization who's been providing rides to the polls for a very long time is Mississippi Moves, headed by Mac Epps. He has been working with partners across the state, but also in the metro area to really get people to the polls. And so if people want to know how to do that, they can contact him at 662-205-6683. That's 662-205-MOVE or 662-205-6683. Mississippi Moves is just doing some incredible work to not just get people, register to vote, but they want to make sure that you get out and vote.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, you guys, we're going to take another short break and we'll be right back with more Woman to Woman with Joanne.
This is Stephen James with the Stephen James Foundation, and I want to welcome you to Pink Fridays, a fundraiser benefiting the American Cancer Society. We call it a party with a purpose. We have an awesome lineup of local talent and national artists. So please get your tickets at www.pinkfridays2020.eventbrite.com. I'm Stephen James. I want to welcome you to Pink Fridays exclusively on ICTV.
Okay, y'all, we are back and we're still talking with the beautiful Cassandra Welchlin about the importance of voting. And now I want to talk about redistricting. In 2021, that's going to take place. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, so redistricting usually occurs with the census, and that happens every 10 years. So, of course, we know the census has occurred, is over, where we have to count every person. And that's important because of all the federal dollars that come down to states to support our communities. And that's from, education, that's roads and bridges, that's the social safety nets around, our SNAP benefits, all of those things, Medicaid and Social Security, all of those things are important. Well, right after that is when redistricting happens. And that's when the lines, the congressional lines and the legislative lines are drawn that tells us who we can get, who will be representing us when it comes down to our state leaders, our senators and our legislators. And so who we elected last year will actually be a part of redrawing those lines. And we want lines that are drawn because it's important that we have representation. We want representation from our communities. And so what that will do is allow us to have an opportunity to, and then what that does is also drawing those lines gets us to, the voting precincts as well. And so all of those things are just so key and so important. So that's going to be happening starting in 2021. And so when we talk about, and I believe 10 years ago, we actually lost a congressional district because it measures also, the census measures the population. And when you don't have enough population, they say, well, you don't need another congressional district. And so that means money is lost, representation is lost. And so
even though the people are there, because they weren't counted, it looks like they're not there. And that's how we lose.
And that's how we lose the congressional districts. Yes. And so, but that also is important for our legislative districts as well. And so it's going to be really important that community is paying attention and that they are involved. There's supposed to be public hearings on this, and people need to, pay attention because we cannot afford to lose, these legislative districts. Or, it may be an opportunity for other districts, to be drawn that has more representation of our communities. Right now, we only have one Black person in Congress that represents, that represents Black people. And so, and that's in Benny Thompson's district, right? Congressional District 2. And so that's Congress. But again, we're also talking about legislative districts. And again, that's what's really important is these state, elected offices, because you want representation. And we've had, some legislative districts have gone away. And so we need to make sure that we are part of that process. We need to be paying attention. You need to be asking your legislator when it comes time to redraw these legislative districts, they need to hold a community meeting inside their community so they can help educate them on what the process is and help them see, where does my line fall?
Because that's what I wanted to ask, how since the census is done and the redistricting is about to start, what can we do now? Or is it too late? Or just being at the meeting, is there something that when we voice our opinion, is that something that we can say or do that will keep them from shutting?
Well, what I would say, the census definitely is done. And we'll get, I'm not quite sure what the deadline is for getting those results back, from that lets us see, what the population is. And that's going to also inform, these legislative, districts and the redrawing. But what I can say right now is it would be really important to start talking with your elected official now and connect with community-based organizations in your community, such as the NAACP. They're going to be working on this very heavily. If you have an NAACP in your area, go ahead and get in contact, with them. Other organizations, community-based organizations that work around these issues, have conversations with them. Say, I want to go ahead and start, at the beginning of the year, I want to start having these conversations about what is redistricting. And there's going to be, and One Voice Mississippi is also going to be really leading that effort. We're going to be a part of partnering with them, but it's going to be really important that people pay attention on their social media platforms. Go ahead and talk with their elected official. And that's at the city level too.
Right.
That's at the city level. Talk to them about, let's go ahead and start having conversations and educating our community about the redistricting. That is so key and so important. So who you elect we'll be a part of redrawing those lines. Do you want to be drawn out? Do you want to be drawn in?
Yes.
Who's going to be your representative? You know, those kinds of things are so key and so important. So you don't want to be left out of the dark around that.
Right.
So we want to encourage people to get engaged, get involved, contact the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. Let us partner with you. Let's partner together to really make sure that there is equality, there is equity, that your voice is inserted into the process. And that your voice is heard, that because I think what's really important around this voting is the state capitol is our state. It's the people's capital.
Yes.
We pay those legislators' salary for being a legislator.
Yes.
So we have to hold them accountable.
Yes.
And so the legislature, the capital, it's your capital. And so it's just so important that people go to the capital. And I know we're in the midst of COVID, but that they, call their legislators and they say, I noticed that you didn't vote this way, or I noticed that you are straddling the fence, or I noticed you did a great thing, hooray.
Yes.
But make them come and tell you what they did,
Yes.
because you're paying their salary, because it's our taxpayer dollars. So don't be afraid of your legislator or that process, because you are the ones that have to hold them accountable, and we pay their salaries.
Amen. Thank you so much, Cassandra. This has been wonderful and great information that we all need to know about this upcoming election, about voting, about our local and state legislators.
Yes.
So this has been awesome.
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you. And people can follow us, on our Facebook, which is MS Black Women's Roundtable.
Yes.
They can get more information from there. They can go to our website, msblackwomensroundtable.org. So definitely do that. We actually are having a gospel brunch right now, live on Facebook with our National Black Women's Roundtable. So they can go to that, go on Twitter, Facebook, and have your soul feel on this Sunday.
Yes, awesome.
Thank you, Joanne, for having me.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Okay. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Woman to Woman with Joanne. We love y'all so much, and we'll see you next time.
If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you'd like to sponsor an episode, please reach out to us. You can email us at joanne@womantowomanwithjoanne.com.